Okay. All right. Well, happy Monday and welcome to Stats 10. Welcome back to school. And I guess we'll get started. Well, I don't know. Maybe before we begin, do we have any students where this is like your first class ever at UCLA? Congratulations. Welcome. Are you entering as a freshman in the fall, or are you from another university, or just curious? You. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, welcome. Welcome to UCLA. Excited to. I hope you like our school. I'm biased. All right. Well, anyway, this is. I'm sorry. My name is Miles, and I'll be your teacher. I've been teaching with the stats department. This is I guess, entering my 8th year now. And anyway, I always enjoy teaching intro stats. And yeah, let's go ahead and let me just cover a few things regarding the course. I just published the Canvas page like a couple days ago. So if you haven't taken a look, that's okay. We'll take a look. The syllabus is posted here, and I feel like my syllabus gets longer every single quarter, but here it is. Okay, so we meet now, and you found the room, so that's all good. Here's kind of a calendar, and I'll go over some of the different stuff. One note, and I made an update. Week 6 Monday is Labor Day, and that's a holiday, so we don't have class that day. But I feel like losing a class during summer session feels like a huge loss in terms of our ability to cover content. So I'm going to cover, like if this wasn't a holiday, I would have, whatever lecture I would have covered, I'm going to cover the week before on Friday. And I know it's always kind of like grumble, throwing extra content and stuff at you, but I guess I feel an obligation to make sure you guys get like the full class worth of material. And if it's any consolation, the last bit of material will be covered the week before, and we'll give you, a couple extra days to kind of study and prepare for the final exam. So that's going to be Friday, September 2nd, and I will deliver that lecture via Zoom. So that will I'll send out a link and everything regarding that. Okay. So anyway, we have a midterm week 3, final exam week 6, and you know what? I've got a lot of this in the slides here. So okay. Highlights from the syllabus. Let's go ahead and take a look. So this is going to be our grade breakdown, and I'll cover what exactly a lecture viewing quiz is and all of that. We also have quizzes on Gradescope, and I'll show you what that looks like. There's lab assignments, homework, and then we've got a midterm and a final. Grading scheme subject to change, but probably not. It's probably going to be this. So we'll do that. I grade on a straight scale. I don't curve. I don't believe in curving in that, what does that mean? I don't like the idea that, a certain percentage of students are going to get an A and a certain percentage will get a B and a certain percentage will get something, and that, students are being ranked against each other. So instead, I do my best to write a fair exam in that, I ask you questions that are fair and, covering material that we've covered, and I measure you against that. Overall, I think, I've been happy with grade distributions in the past, and so I feel like the exams I've written are pretty good. But if for whatever reason it turns out my exams this quarter are bad, I'll make adjustments accordingly. But you should be able to kind of calculate your grade, and there should be no mystery. Okay, midterm and final, and we've already established that. And then I also noted this regarding the holiday, Labor Day. So no class that day, but I will hold an extra lecture the Friday before. Okay, so what is the lecture viewing quiz? So each, I think it's important that you come to lecture and you attend. At the same time, I don't take attendance, and I don't like go through a roll and read off your names or anything like that. So the way I kind of make sure that people have at least attended lecture, or at least watched the lecture, is via the lecture viewing quiz. And the lectures are recorded, so if you aren't able to attend in person one day, then you can watch the video recording and you can still get credit for the lecture viewing quiz. And so the way it works is you log into Canvas, and let me switch to, I think this is what you see, student view. Okay, and so you see this one, this is for today, week one Monday lecture viewing quiz, and it's due tomorrow. But basically you'll click the link and you'll do take the quiz, and you'll notice the questions here have no text, no context to the question. There's no, they don't test your knowledge on anything here, okay? But what I will say during lecture is I will say, the first answer is the letter A, okay? The first answer is the letter A, and you'll want to write this down. Just jot this down somewhere, or put it down in your notes. And this is for real. So today, for week one Monday, question number 1, the answer is A, okay? And then I will give you the answers to question 2 and question 3 later on in today's lecture, and that will just kind of, it's a very loose way for me to kind of check that you are at least listening to the lecture, and or at least watch the video of the lecture or something like that. Now and that's how that will work. And so if you are not able to attend lecture live, you just have to kind of watch the video and record your answers to the video, record your answers to the quiz, and you'll get credit for that. This is intended to be a very easy way to earn points, okay? So what do I have? 18%, okay? So basically everybody should max out these points. There's no real reason anybody should lose points on the lecture viewing quiz. The only way you lose is if you don't do it, okay? So just make sure you, after today's lecture, just answer those 3 questions, okay? So the first one is A, and then I will give you the answers to questions 2 and 3, and that will be, and that's how you get your points, okay? I guess the other thing is they close. So Monday's lecture view quiz will close Tuesday night at 11:59. So you just have to make sure, if you aren't able to come to class that day, or make sure you watch it soon after. Make sure you watch it by the next day. Okay. Now Wednesdays you have until like Sunday to watch. Okay. So I'll give a lecture on Wednesday, and there will be a lecture view quiz, and Wednesday's lecture view quiz will be open through Sunday. So if you skip Wednesday's class, you have quite a few more days to kind of watch the lecture and answer the questions there. Okay. And again, so the answers to the quizzes are provided audibly in lecture. They're not in the lecture notes, so it's not like you can just kind of open up the PDF and get your answers. All right. Now, and these are also quizzes, and so it goes without saying, but I'll also just remind you, don't share answers to the quiz. Okay, you wouldn't share answers to like exams or other quizzes. This also counts as a quiz, so don't share your answers to this. Okay, and you're not doing your friends or classmates any favors by giving them the answers. The point is to make sure students watch the content and learn. Okay, any questions on how the lecture viewing quiz works? Okay, and again, it's intended for you to, as an easy way to kind of just get some points. Okay, everybody should kind of max these out, and there's not much of a reason to lose points here. Okay, and especially one of the view quizzes is dropped. Okay, so if you have like something goes wrong and you aren't able to do it, okay, one is dropped. So that's that. So that effectively turns out 2% of your final grade is each quiz, and so do that. Okay. Oh, and the other thing is, just make sure you click the correct buttons. Okay. Just take a couple extra seconds to make sure you click the correct answers when you're filling it out. Don't. Sometimes students will misclick. They're like just rushing through or whatever. Just take a couple extra seconds to make sure you've correctly answered the questions. Okay. Grade scope quizzes. So each week, I also there's. Oh no, we don't want that. Let's see. There is a quiz that you will take. Okay. Quiz 0 is like a practice quiz that you will need to take. And they all load up in Gradescope. So you click. I think because I'm like a test student, it doesn't work. But basically, you'll click this load quiz 0, and it will bring up a new window. And there's going to be a PDF of the quiz that will pop up. Okay, and what you will do is you'll answer the questions to the quiz, and you will scan and upload your quiz to Gradescope. If you have a printer, you can print out the PDF, write your answers on it, and upload, and then you'll scan and upload it. If you don't have a printer, you can take a blank sheet of paper, just number your paper, right? Just problem 1, this is the answer. Problem 2, this is the answer. Problem 3, this is the answer. And if you and you can scan and upload that, or if you have an iPad with a pen, you could just download the PDF onto your iPad. Fill out the answers with your pen, save it, and upload it. I don't know if there's some other way that I can't think of, but basically you just need to get your answers into a PDF and upload it. Okay. As far as scanning goes, I imagine all of you have a camera a phone with a camera on it, and your phones. I think everybody's done this, but in case somehow you've never done this before, I have a little tutorial on how to scan a PDF with your phone. Okay, and these are just old videos that I've linked online, and you can download. There's probably like 100 apps out there. Just be careful. Some of those apps are like malware and things like that. But just you'll take pictures, turn it into a PDF, and you upload it. Okay. I'm under the assumption that you are all technologically competent and capable. Sometimes, but I guess this is why we have Quiz 0. Okay, Quiz 0 is like an extra credit thing, and it's just to make sure you can kind of go through the process where you scan it and you're able to find that file. That's like often presents the hardest part for students, is finding the file, and then you can upload it onto the thing. Okay. Any questions on how that works? All right. Well, anyway, try out Quiz 0. You can do it today. The deadline is Thursday. Okay, so try out Quiz 0, and if you encounter any issues, with it, let me know right away, and we will. I'll try to work it out from there. Other than that, you will have your very first quiz, and that's going to be due on Sunday, and that will cover material from today and Wednesday's lecture. So don't attempt quiz 1 until after Wednesday's lecture, after you feel comfortable with this stuff. Okay, the quizzes are intended to be these low stakes things. You do them each week and you upload them, and that's that. Okay. Homework also. I've assigned problems from the textbook, and you'll do them on a piece of paper, and then you'll scan and upload. Homework is graded. Okay, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so quizzes are intended to be low stakes. Don't stress too much about them. We'll talk about the labs and homework. Okay, so let's talk about homework. So homework, I assign problems from the textbook, and you'll scan them and upload them to Gradescope, or if you want to use your iPad or whatever, that's fine. Okay, homework's graded on completion, not correctness, and I don't even require you to show your work for the homework. Okay, and then I think almost all of the problems I've assigned are odd problems. The homework, again, I don't have any stakes here. Like, I don't care if you do your homework, okay? I'm not your parents, and but the reason why I assign homework is because I think it's good practice, and it helps you kind of learn the material better. All right. So anyway, I've assigned problems, and you'll do them, and you'll scan them and upload them. I'm pretty sure this has happened in the past, where because I assigned odd problems, I'm pretty sure some students just went straight to the back of the book, just copied the numbers down on the in the answer section of the book, and then sent that. And I wouldn't even know, okay? Because I have no idea whether they arrived at these numbers because they actually did the work, or if they just copied them out of the back. I have no idea. I don't care, okay? But the reason why I assign the homework is for you to get practice and for you to do it. Oh, you'll also notice I have 2 sets of problems here, and that is because, I guess I should talk about the textbook. Let's see. What is their book called? It is called Essential Statistics. Okay, so this is how one of the books looks like. Essential Statistics, 2nd edition. Okay, and all right. So please don't do this. Okay, don't spend $150 on this textbook. It's not worth that much. Okay, rent it. $20 to rent the book. That seems reasonable. What's loose leaf? Okay, or spend $10 and buy it loose leaf, I guess. Loose leaf means you need to get your own three ring binder and do that. Okay, so that's Essential Statistics 2nd edition. The other is I forget what it's called. Introductory. No, that's not a very creative name, is it? Okay. Introductory Statistics. The author is Gould. Exploring the World Through Data. This is, okay, yeah, or 3rd edition. So Introductory Statistics, 3rd edition. And, this costs a lot more. Okay, well, get whatever's cheaper, all right? And you need it. I mean, the chapter content. So I don't know why. Well, I know why, it's money, but these 2 books are pretty much the exact same thing, but they've changed up the homework problems. So anyway, if you bought or maybe you had a classmate or a friend who took this class or something, we're using the same book. So get either version of the book, whatever's available to you, and depending on what you have, which problems you do, the numbers will be different. But obviously, just only do one set of the problems, okay? And that's that, okay? Now, in this first week, we're covering 3 chapters. So you've got 3 chapters of homework there, okay? And then, and then the last thing is the lab. The lab, this is probably the thing that the students complain about the most. So labs will be covered in section with your TA, and you'll download all of these different files, and your TA will teach you how to use the software, okay? So you're gonna, you'll have to install, there is a program called R, okay? So if you just search Microsoft Bing with R, or Google, whatever, okay? So you'll download this, you'll go to download, and it says CRAN, and there's all these different computers on the internet, and I'll probably pick somewhere in the United States. All right, let's go to, I don't know, Oregon State, okay? Sure. And then we'll click download R for Mac or Windows or something, okay? Oh, for Mac, there's 2 versions depending on how new your laptop is. So if your Mac has an Intel chip, you'll download this one. And if your Mac has one of the Apple Silicons, the M1, and I think they just came out with the M2. Can you buy an M2 laptop now? I'm not sure. Okay. All right. So if you just got a brand new laptop, you'll need to get the Apple Silicon. Okay. Windows, you'll get Windows. And that's that. Okay. And so you'll download and install R, and then after you download and install R, you'll search for something called RStudio. RStudio is a IDE. Oh, what is this? Okay. That sits on top of R. So R is kind of the base language, and then RStudio is a way for you to kind of interact with R. It just makes it nicer to work with R. Okay, and so you'll go to Products, RStudio, and then you will get the desktop version, and you will get the free version. Okay, don't pay the pro version at $995 a year. Just get the free one, and again, just click free and download the one for your computer. Okay, and so you'll do that, and then again, your TA will cover how to do all of this. All right. And you will, when you're done, you'll upload it to Gradescope for grading. All right. Questions on how any of this stuff works? All right. Okay. So one thing, and maybe I gotta add a page for office hours. My preferred method of contact and communication is talking, all right, and office hours. So I feel bad saying this, but I am bad at email, okay? And, because, I get so many emails, and sometimes it takes me a long time to respond, all right? But if you come talk to me either after class or during office hours, I can't ignore you, and I'll make sure, we address whatever concerns or questions you have. And that's, so I will post my office hours schedule. I try to make myself available, I think, so I'll have 4 different sessions. I think Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturdays I'll be available for office hours. And so just come by at one of those times. And if none of those times work, then we can set them an appointment separately. And I meet in person or via Zoom, and that's fine. And that's kind of my preferred method for contact. If you have any kind of personal issues, some kind of emergency comes up or something, and you need to be excused or at least deadlines extended and things like that, I try to be flexible. I try to be accommodating within reason. And so, but just come talk to me, okay? And I know sometimes, when you're in the middle of a crisis and things like that, it's hard to talk to people, and I get that, but at the same time, if people aren't kind of talking to me or communicating with me, I have no idea what's happening. So anyway, come to office hours. You'll get a faster response than email in general, but you have that, okay? And I think that's it. I was going to say another thing, and that is the class is going to feel fast. All right, we are during regular. This is a 5-credit class, and so if you imagine what a 5-credit class feels like during the regular quarter, it feels like a lot of work, and here we are kind of compressing all of that into 6 weeks of time. And basically of our sessions, 2 of them are taken up for administering exams. And so pretty much every week every lecture we have is like an entire week's worth of content. Okay? And then in each week you get basically like what would have given you 2 weeks to cover your homework and stuff. That's all kind of compressed all within a single week. So in my opinion, and some students will struggle with the material, but in my opinion, the material itself isn't hard per se, but it's just a lot, okay? There's just kind of a lot coming, with every lecture and every week, you get homework and you have a lab. And so I don't know how to just put this nicely, but please try not to fall behind, okay? Try to keep up with all of the stuff. Try not to fall behind. After today's lecture, I recommend at least getting started on Chapter 1's homework, okay? And then once you have that done, go ahead and submit it. And then on Wednesday, we'll cover Chapters 2 and 3, and then I recommend getting started on that, as soon as possible. The labs in the beginning, especially, I imagine for many of you, this will be your very first time kind of working with R and RStudio, and there's a lot of kind of new things about it, and it can be kind of frustrating and overwhelming. So if you feel that way during the lab, reach out to your TA, reach out to me. We are resources that are here to help you. Our goal is your learning, and ultimately, I also hope you enjoy the class, okay? It is misery to try to do an entire week's worth of content or whatever, and if you wait until Sunday when everything is due, okay? That is not a fun way to live. So spread out your work over the week. Try to stay up, keep up with all the material, and your experience with the class will be better, okay? Any questions about course policies or anything of the sort? Okay, all right. Well, then we'll begin. Welcome to Stats 10. So this first slide just says, "I love statistics," and it's true. It is not an exaggeration for me to say that when I took an introductory statistics class in college as an undergraduate student, it literally changed my life in that in undergrad I studied engineering. I studied industrial engineering at a small engineering school in Michigan, and I completed my and I didn't take my first stats class until probably my third year of college, and yeah, I fell in love with the subject. I tried to take as many statistics courses that my school offered, which I think there might have been 3 or 4 total. I took them all. And I finished my engineering degree. They didn't have such a thing as a statistics major. So I finished my engineering degree, and then I worked for a couple years for a couple different companies, and I decided I wanted to return to school, and so I applied and I got into grad school here at UCLA, and I decided I'm going to study statistics, and I got my master's and PhD in statistics here at UCLA, and now I have my dream job of teaching statistics, and yeah, that was I feel like I'm so lucky to to have this job where I get to teach a subject that I love at a school that I love to, honestly, the best students. Truly, it is. There was a short time after I finished my PhD and before I started this job. There was kind of a short time where I was taking like part-time teaching gigs, teaching at different kind of community colleges, different schools around LA, around Los Angeles, and I will tell you, teaching is a lot harder when your students aren't super great, okay? But being at UCLA, honestly, I feel so lucky because U.S. students are excellent. To get into UCLA, it's they only take the best students, really, and so it's a joy. And honestly, like I'm so thankful to you guys for being here and for enrolling in this class. And anyway, so I feel so lucky. I love teaching this subject, and I know for a lot of you, I don't know if you were like, oh, I'm so excited to take statistics this summer, but and it's it fulfills GE requirements, and I understand you're required to take this class for a lot of different things. My hope is that you'll at least gain an appreciation for the subject, and so anyway, that's the goal here, and I hope my enthusiasm and joy for the subject comes forward in my teaching and makes it a bit more of a enjoyable experience for you. All right, so what is statistics all about? And if I had to boil down this entire course into kind of a few bullet points, this would be it. All right, and you're going to learn a bunch of stuff, and you'll learn. Admittedly, a lot of our course, the content, will be covering like the mechanics of this last bullet point: the confidence interval, the z-test, the t-test, how to do all of those things. And if you forget how to do these things 10 years down the road, I will understand, okay? I will not be angry, and I will not be upset that you've forgotten the mechanics of some of these things, okay? Because, if I think back to my undergraduate studies, there's a lot of kind of details on like, these different courses that I've forgotten some of the details about. So, but at least these bullet points, I hope at least you will remember what statistics was all about and some of these kind of key ideas. And number one is, this whole subject of statistics is about making conclusions from data. That's kind of what the entire field of statistics is. It's about making conclusions from data that we've observed. That's why this field exists as a study. And the kind of the second idea is that, once we have this data, the data represents stuff that we are able to observe. And the idea is we want to make conclusions about what we cannot observe, right? If we assume what we observe resembles what we can't observe, being the large population. So if you imagine the population of the United States, there's 300 plus million people, all right? We cannot survey every single person, all right? That's too many people to survey or ask questions about. So we can't directly observe that large population. Instead, maybe we survey 1,000 people, okay? And what we want to do is we want to kind of take what we've seen in the 1,000 people and then generalize it to 300 million people. And that's kind of the idea, all right? We want to make conclusions about large populations that we cannot directly observe. And if you follow the kind of the principles that we'll talk about in this course, it's a viable thing to do. And you just kind of say, these are the conclusions we can make, but there's also going to be some uncertainty built in, okay? And one of the key ideas is bullet point 3, in that if we do observe some kind of relationship, an association between variables in our data, right? So we're surveying, say 1,000 people rather than 300 million people. We see some kind of relationship. We see, I don't know, which state you're from, okay? Whether you're from California or whether you're from Texas, maybe there's a relationship between some other variable. And so a silly example is like, if you're from Texas, are you more likely to drive a pickup truck than if you were from California or something like that, okay? And you might see, when you survey 1,000 people, you might see some kind of relationship, right? And you surveyed 1,000 people and it seems like, oh, in Texas, there seem to be more people who drive pickup trucks than there were in California or something like that. And now the question shifts to, is that like a real thing that exists in the entire population? If we were to look at everybody in California and everybody in Texas, is that something that we would actually observe, right? Could there be an association between variables in the population? Or is it possible that it's just kind of a random fluke of our data, right? Because we're taking a sample and not surveying the entire population, is it possible that it's just like a little bit of a random thing, right? So, contrast that to, if I flipped a coin 10 times and you flipped a coin 10 times, maybe my coin lands heads 6 times out of 10, and your coin lands heads 4 times out of 10, okay? Does that mean my coin is more likely to land heads than your coin? Okay, and I think we would say, no, that's just kind of randomness, right? So with coin flips, we're expecting something around 5 heads and 5 tails with 10 flips, but we know it's subject to randomness. And so if I get 6 heads and you only get 4 heads, we're not going to suddenly conclude that we have different coins with different properties. That we would just say that's just a random kind of a random fluke or a random thing that could happen. And the question is, how do we distinguish between what's random and what's actually there? And that's really what it boils down to, okay? And so bullet point 4 is we're going to learn probability. Probability teaches us about randomness, and it's going to allow us to decide if our data was a random fluke or not. So we got to understand what could happen under randomness, right? We have this intuitive sense that when I flip a coin 10 times, it's not unusual to get 6 heads out of 10 flips, okay? But what if you get 8 heads out of 10 flips? Is that a weird thing, or is that possible with a random coin? Okay, 9 heads out of 10 flips, is that a sign that your coin is somehow has been altered or messed with, or is that possible under randomness, okay? So we got to study a little bit of probability to understand what could be random versus what couldn't be, right? What if I change it to 100 coin flips? If I flip a coin 100 times, is 60 heads unusual, or is that pretty normal? What about 70 heads out of 100 flips. Is that unusual or not? Okay, so we learn probability there. And so once we learn probability, we tie that back together with our data, and we're going to have statistical tools. Okay, and admittedly, we spend a considerable amount of time on these statistical tools: the confidence interval, the z-test, the t-test, and these are all kind of ways to produce values that are going to help us in making these conclusions. And so, you know, as far as this class goes and the final exam and things like that, you're going to have to learn how to conduct these different use these statistical tools and conduct the tests. But I would say, you know, the big ideas about just, you know, how we're making conclusions from data and on that logical flow there, that's the important part. Okay. All right. Oh, this is where it says, you know, my goal is to cover chapters 1 through 9 in the textbook, and yeah, so I think I've already said all of this. The content isn't hard, but there is a lot, and it will feel fast-paced. So don't hesitate to ask me or to ask your TAs for help. And again, we're here to want to make sure you learn. All right. So this is kind of the plan I have for the content. This week we'll cover chapters 1 through 3. Next week, chapters 4 and 5. Week 3 we'll cover chapter 6, and then there's a midterm exam. And then weeks 4 and 5 we'll be covering chapters 7, 8, and 9. And then the final week will be our final exam. It's a little bit of a map on how kind of the concepts tie together. So the first week, okay, is all about descriptive statistics. Chapters 1, 2, 3, and actually chapter 4 is also all about descriptive statistics. How do we take our data? How do we summarize it? How do we describe it? How do we draw pictures describing our data? Okay. Once we understand how to do that, then we're going to shift over to another topic, probability. Okay? And probability is all about how likely or unlikely is some kind of random event going to happen. How do we measure that? And we expand on probability into dealing with probability distributions. What's the probability of getting certain numbers? And then we expand that to sampling distributions, which covers the probability of getting a particular sample or getting a particular set of actual data. And that's what sampling distributions are. And then we'll tie those ideas, the concepts of probability along with concepts of descriptive statistics, to perform statistical inference, where we try to make conclusions about the population based on the samples of data that we have, right? And so that's kind of the course outline. So this is where we are headed. I guess before we get into all of the topics and whatnot, I'd also like to just kind of take a moment and say your own health and your own well-being is important. It's more important than any of your grades or anything like that. That's something that took me a while to learn as a student, and I think this is not atypical of the UCLA student, right? So in order to get to UCLA, I imagine many of you were either the top performing or one of the top performing students at your high school. And you know, you got into UCLA because you had good grades, or you know, you had other things that made you attractive to UCLA as a student. And so I think there's a natural tendency to prize our grades and all of that. And sometimes you know, we put a little bit too much on ourselves, and we allow our physical health to suffer, or even our mental or spiritual or emotional health to suffer for it. And I want to make sure that we try to have a balanced life. Okay, and I say that at the same time knowing this is a summer course and there's kind of a lot of work being assigned here. All right. And so what I want you to know that it's okay if you have a week or something, all right, where you say, you know what, this is just too much stuff. I need to kind of just chill and relax a little bit, and you do that, okay? Now, there's a balance. Obviously, you don't want to just run away from all of your work and ignore all of your responsibilities. At the same time, I want you to be able to kind of balance things, and I want you to give yourself permission to, to not do your homework one day or something like that, okay? Or, in a pinch, if you just need to copy the answers out of the back of the textbook, I won't know, I won't care, and you can do that too, okay? If you get sick, experience any kind of issues in life and whatnot, just let me know, okay? You don't have to tell me all the details of your life, and I don't need to know that stuff. But just let me know that if I just extend a homework deadline or lab deadline or something like that, I'll try to be accommodating. I'll try to be flexible, and try to work with you. Okay, I'm here to teach you. I'm here to support you guys. We want this to be a positive experience. It's an intense 6 weeks, but I want to also kind of just take a step back and just put this out there. Okay. Especially the labs, they can feel overwhelming in the beginning. So reach out to your TAs, reach out to me, and we're happy to help, especially during office hours. Okay. And then, and don't forget to do the viewing quizzes. Don't forget to do the viewing quizzes. So let me go ahead and give you your second view quiz answer. The second view quiz answer for today's view quiz is the letter A. The letter A. A as in apple is your second view quiz answer. Okay? So you should have question 1 and question 2 somewhere in your notes. And again, just make sure you answer the view quiz before tomorrow. Before tomorrow, 11:59. I would just do it right after class. Okay? Or I mean, you could even have the quiz open right now, I think. I don't know. Anyway, second view quiz answer is the letter A, and I will give you your third view quiz answer later on in today's lecture. Okay. Oh, and then take the practice grade scope quiz. So those are there. Okay. So anyway, let's get into to chapter 1. All right. So we're going to cover the nature of data, samples and populations, variables, observational studies, and experiments. That's kind of what we're looking at. All right. So I introduced some of the big ideas in statistics, what this class is all about. And the first bullet point I said is that we can make conclusions from observed data. And that's what the entire subject of statistics is about. And, statistics is starting to overlap more and more a little bit with kind of computer science just because of the amount of data that is available to us. And the only way to kind of reasonably process this data is by using computers and harnessing computer power. If you go back 100 years ago, when statistics was kind of first developing, all of these calculations were done by hand, and the amount of data that people worked with was a lot smaller. But now we are working with massive data sets, and I would say we're kind of living in the golden age of data. And I don't know, maybe it will continue to have tons of data, but I think this is, we're kind of at the time where, in the past decade or so, tons of data have become available, and we're realizing that it's a valuable resource, and it can be harnessed to kind of make decisions and things like that. The flip side of that is if we're in the golden age of data, maybe we're also entering a dark age for privacy, where we carry around these computers in our pocket that is just kind of generating a ton of data, but is also being tracked by every website you're going to puts cookies and things on your phone, and your location data is being tracked, and all of that is in there. And I think right now, we happily give up our data and our privacy in exchange for money. Okay, and it's not even money; it's just discounts, right? You download the Taco Bell app so you can get a free taco every now and then, but that's being used so they can track how often you go to their restaurant or things like that. Although the UCLA Taco Bell, this is a side thing, but they don't accept the app, right? You can't. All right, anyway, the one next to the Starbucks in Westwood, you can order there, but not at the campus Taco Bell. Anyway, I'll go on. And they serve Coke at this Taco Bell, which I love Coke, but they used to be owned by Pepsi, so it's a little bit of a strange thing. But all right, anyway, enough about you go to Target, and I don't know if you've signed up for the red card, but that's being used to kind of track all of your purchases, and I signed up because they were like, hey, you get 5% off, and I said, oh, 5% off, that sounds pretty good, and yeah, so that's all being tracked and things like that, and I don't know. We'll see what happens regarding all of this privacy stuff. Okay, companies in every sector, whatever we're talking about, they are spending lots of money to get data. All right, and every field of science, every area of research involves gathering and analyzing data. And why do we love data so much? And it's because we've seen that when you use data to make conclusions, right? Conclusions and decisions that are based on the data are more reliable than decisions based on gut feelings, tradition, intuition. Now, a lot of times, gut feelings, tradition, and intuition align with the data because those things kind of have developed over the course of with experience. But kind of also analyzing data maybe reveals things that maybe we suspected but weren't quite sure, and they'll reveal to you, phenomenon that's existing, right? There's been a data revolution with pretty much all major sports. Okay, so if you follow any kind of sport, people are constantly looking at numbers and statistics for different players, and especially in places like baseball, and the analysis of data, and kind of the traditional statistics like batting averages have kind of fallen out of favor for kind of new analytics for like on-base percentage and things like that. And yeah, when we use the data, we can identify, potential star athletes for the future and things like that. So lots of money is available there. Okay. Another big idea that we mentioned is, we're going to make conclusions about populations, right? We make conclusions about large populations that we can't observe directly. That's the word underneath the video here, is that we cannot directly observe. When we perform any kind of research, there's often some kind of question that we want to answer. So for example, these are just some example research questions. Is experimental drug ABC effective at treating some disease XYZ, right? So, at the start of the pandemic, there were questions about, what are potential treatments for COVID? Is, hydroxychloroquine, that was something that was suggested. Is that an effective treatment for COVID? What about, I don't know what other else, ivermectin, and all of these other things that were possibly suggested, and is it any good? Okay. Now we want to kind of see what the population, okay? All of the questions that we're looking at have some kind of associated population. The population would be everyone who's relevant to answering the question. So if we're talking about, is some drug effective at treating XYZ, disease XYZ, the population would be everybody who has disease XYZ, which in a lot of cases, we don't even know who's part of that population. And we also, even if we knew who's part of that population, we have no way to kind of track every single person down and ask them questions or do some kind of experiment with them. Okay. Other possible questions, if you're doing business research and things like that, if you bump up the cost of something, right? We're all kind of feeling the effects of inflation and things like that, and I went to In-N-Out and I felt like, oh my goodness, the cost of a double-double. All of my examples are on fast food because I probably eat way too much of it. The cost of the double-double went up by, some percentage and something like that, right? Are people still going to buy it, or are people going to slow down, their spending, right? If they bump up the cost of Netflix, are you still going to subscribe, right? If they always threaten to stop password sharing and things like that, are people going to stop subscribing, things like that. These are kind of the questions. And in that case, your population would be everybody, all the potential customers of the product, right? All potential customers of the product. So, somebody's vegetarian or vegan, that's not going to be part of In-N-Out's target population. They're not concerned about, raising the cost of the double-double. What proportion of voters have a favorable opinion of some politician? John Q. Public, okay? So somebody's running for office. We've got midterm elections coming up. Who's going to vote for who? That's always kind of a question. And the population there would be all of the voters, right? All voters who could vote for or against the politician. So if it's, a state senator, it would be whoever's in that, not senator, senator from a U.S. state or something like that, it would be everybody in kind of their jurisdiction there, right? And in all of these cases, whatever we're talking about, the population is just too big or it's impractical for us to study or observe directly. So we can't do that. So instead what we do, instead of studying the population directly, we look at a sample, okay? A sample is going to be a selection of people or subjects taken from the population. What we want the sample to be representative. We want the sample to be representative of the population. We want it to be like a small miniature version of the big thing, okay? When you select your sample, your researcher, as the researcher or whoever is doing the research, they then gather data, right? They collect information. They say, all right, thanks for being part of our study. We have a few questions. Do you, what is your age and what's your gender? What's your this and that? And whatever information they record, that becomes your observed data. And now we look at our sample, our observed data, and based on that, we're going to try to make conclusions about the population. So, we survey 800 people. In those 800 people, we say, who are you going to vote for in the fall for this particular election? And we say, okay, based on the results of these 800 people, we're going to guess this is what's going to happen on election day. All right, based on what we see on these, how people responded in our survey or in our poll, we're going to guess this is what's going to happen on election day. Here's just some example. We might be interested to see if some experimental drug, so some experimental drug ABC, is it more effective at treating disease XYZ than the current conventional treatment. So maybe there's a disease, and the current way we treat that is using this particular conventional treatment. we want to know if an experimental drug is more effective, right? This is basically what pharmaceutical companies are trying to answer every day. Is they're trying to find, new medications, new drugs that that can be an answer to people with different diseases. Okay, so the population in that case would be everybody who has some particular disease. And again, the problem with this population is that first, we might not know who has this disease, right? So, if the disease, if we're talking about, cancer or something like that, right? Part of the problem is we don't know who has cancer, right? A lot of people themselves might have cancer and they have no idea, okay? And so we have no idea how to track down every single person with a particular disease. Even if we knew, we can't study the population directly. So what we have to do is we have to take a sample of volunteers, all right? And so, if it's a medical study, it's quite expensive to do studies. And so maybe you get 80 volunteers, 80 people, okay? You get a sample of volunteers who have this particular disease. And what we're hoping is that the 80 people who have volunteered to be part of our study is going to be representative of the general population. And so this is something you have to kind of keep in mind is when you read studies, especially if there are studies done in different countries, you have to ask, is that group of people, can we generalize to, another nation? So, just because if you everybody is human, but at the same time there are strong differences. For example, diet will be quite different in different nations, right? And so what kind of foods do people eat in the United States versus foods that they eat in Europe or Asia or different parts of the world? Is that something that plays a role into the effectiveness of a particular treatment and things like that? So these are things that you have to kind of keep in mind, right? If your study is done just on a particular age group, okay, can you then generalize to people who are outside of that age group, right? So if the study is done on middle-aged people, can you generalize because maybe middle-aged people are the people who are most affected by this particular disease? Can you generalize to people who are younger or people who are older, right? Who might also have the same disease, but and things like that. So what we're hoping is our sample of volunteers, whoever we're studying, is representative, similar to the population, but maybe that's not always the case. All right. So anyway, you look at your sample of data, you gather the data, you do the study, you do the experiment, and you find out at the end of the experiment that in your sample, those who took the experimental drug, they had a higher rate of recovery than those who just received the traditional treatment. Okay, so you're looking at this, and this looks promising, right? You say, okay, we did this clinical trial. People who got the experimental drug, 42% of them recovered versus people who got the traditional treatment, 30% recovered, right? So it went from 30% recovery rate to 42% recovery rate, okay? And so now the question is, does this mean that our treatment is effective? All right, is it more effective than is this experimental drug more effective than the traditional treatment? And in order to answer that question, we have to look at the probability, and we have to ask this question, is it possible that this difference, 42% versus 30%, or whatever numbers we're looking at, could it just be random chance, right? Kind of like flipping the coin. When I flipped the coin, I got 6 heads. When you flip the coin, you got 4 heads. Is that a sign that that there's a different rate when flipping coins, or is that just a random chance, right? We got 42% recovering versus 30% recovering. Is that a sign that there's actually a different rate in recovery, or is that just a random chance, right? That's what we want to figure out. How do we select the people to be part of our sample? That is known as the sampling process, okay? Sampling is the process of selecting individuals from the population. Ideally, we select, the samples we select are going to be representative of the population. If the sample is not representative of the population, it is said to be biased, okay? So for example, a sample that we study maybe selects too few or too many individuals from a particular racial group or a particular age group or gender or whatever it might be, okay? So if you look at a lot of kind of studies, done in the 1960s or things like that, okay? A lot of these medical studies were done with middle-aged white men, okay? That was kind of the most prevalent group for a lot of these studies. And the question is, can we take the conclusions from those studies and do they still apply today, or do they apply to different ages, different genders, different racial groups, things like that, okay? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. If a sample is not representative of the population, it is said to be biased. Sometimes it makes a difference, and sometimes it doesn't. The answer is it always depends. Now, one method that should produce a representative sample is simple random sampling. It's not guaranteed. It's random, okay? So it's a random process. So overall, it should produce a representative sample, but not guaranteed to do so, okay? And so the way simple random sampling works is we start off with a sampling frame. The sampling frame, in the ideal scenario, is a list of all the individuals in the population. This is actually something very difficult to achieve, generally a source of a lot of bias. So even if it's something like, okay, let's get all individuals in Los Angeles County, that's an impossible task, okay? Give me a sampling frame that lists all of the individuals who live in Los Angeles County. You can't do it, all right? There's people move into the county every day. People move out. People are born. People die. There's a lot of people who don't have permanent addresses. A lot of people, that are trying to stay off the grid and things like that. So how can we even get a list of all individuals? If you go back, a couple decades, we had phone books. I haven't seen a phone book in, I don't know, however many years. But that had a list of a lot of people. But again, even if you went back a few decades and you looked at the phone book, a lot of people aren't listed in the phone book either, right? A lot of times it's only just the head of the household that's listed there, okay? And today, I don't know, maybe if you were some government agency and you had access and could subpoena records or something, maybe you could say, all right, let's find all of the phones that pinged towers that are located in Los Angeles, and maybe that will give you a sense of how many kind of all of the phones that exist. But some people have more than one phone, some people don't have phones, and so even then, it's difficult to even, and again, you would need to have access to those technology records, which probably, your normal person won't have access to that. All right, but anyway, so I don't know how you would do it. If you work for the government, maybe you could get like DMV records, but if you look at the DMV, I don't know if some of you live, are from another part of the state or a different state, you might not have like updated your records, so your driver's license currently says you're located in Los Angeles or Westwood or something, okay? But anyway, once you have a sampling frame, all we do is we just select individuals one at a time at random from the sampling frame. And if you do that, then every individual in the sampling frame has an equal chance of being selected, and then every possible sample has an equal chance of being selected. Lotto numbers are an example of a simple random sample, and it's a little strange to think about, but the ticket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 has just an equally likely chance to be selected as the exact combination 9, 12, 23, 31, 47, 52. The exact numbers here, they all have kind of an equal chance of being selected, right? Once you have a sample selected, we're going to record information about the individuals who are selected. Each piece of information you record, we call a variable, and we call them variables because they vary. They vary from person to person. And just broadly speaking, we have two types of variables. We have numeric variables and we have categorical variables. Numeric variables describe a quantity. They tell you how much they have or how many. They often have units. These are numeric variables. On the other hand, categorical variables tell you what type or what kind. And basically, one question you can use to ask, is it a numeric variable, is you say, well, can I make a comparison? Can I make a numeric comparison and say this one is more or less than another, right? So do we have, is this person taller or shorter than someone else? That's a numeric comparison between height values, right? This person is 70 inches tall. This person's 68 inches tall. And we can say one person is 2 inches taller than the other. So, when we gather our data, we frequently organize them into tables. All right, so here is a table, and over here are each observation is a row. Each observation gets its row, and each row only contains one observation. And we'd say, our sample size, however many individuals we have in our sample, we give the letter n. Okay, our number of observations. It's also going to be the number of rows that exist in your table. Meanwhile, we have variables. Each variable gets its own kind of column in the table. Each column also contains only one variable. And so here is just, let's pretend we surveyed some people, and we have Alice, age 20, female, 62 inches tall, with brown hair, and has area code 310. Brett, age 19, is male, 71 inches tall, has black hair, and area code is 562. Which variables are numeric and which ones are categorical? This is, I think, straightforward for most of these, maybe with the exception of area code. So the name, technically, I guess, is a categorical variable, or it's used to identify each row. So we could call it an identifier. Age, we would say, is numeric. We're kind of measuring how many years somebody's been alive. Gender, we'll say, is categorical. And here I just have two genders represented, but we could have, more, non-binary or other, or declined to state, however many categories we might want to include there. Height, numeric, number of inches tall, we can make comparisons. Hair color would be categorical, and again, how you define hair colors. So, broadly speaking, we can have brown hair and black hair and blonde hair and things like that. But, if you go to the hair color section at Target or something, there's probably like 20 different hair colors or something, right? Or I don't know, maybe even more depending on which brand you select. And so, again, the number of categories for anything is always a little bit of a difficult thing to establish unless there's something very clear that establishes something. Okay, the only one that might throw us off a little bit is area code. Okay, so area code, I've got 310, 562, and they look like numbers. But again, the key for a numeric variable is that it has to represent a quantity. Okay, and you ask this question: does it make sense to say Brett has more area code than Alice? Okay, Brett 562 has more area code than Alice with 310. That's not how area codes work, right? We don't make comparisons between area codes and tie it to some kind of numeric quantity. We don't look at your, say, social security number and say this represents some quantity or amount that you have. And so in that case, area code is not a numeric variable. Okay, we would just leave it as it would be categorical. Okay, so you just think about, does it make sense to compare things? So if you say, like, how much money do you have in the bank, that would be numeric, right? Because you can say $300 is more than $200. That's fine, okay? But an account number is not numeric. That doesn't, you wouldn't say I have more account number than somebody else or something like that, okay? So we have that, okay? The other ones, age or height, you can say Alice is older than Brett, or Brett is taller or has more height than Alice. So those things make sense. Those would be numeric variables. A lot of times when we do a categorical variable, we would record with a description of the category. So for example, hair color, we would write brown, black hair, blonde hair, red hair, other colored hair, or something like that. You might also code your categorical variable with a number, right? And so for example, we could say brown hair is category 1, black hair is category 2, or blonde hair is category 3, or something like that. If you do this, these numbers represent categories and don't have numeric meaning. So if you do this, we wouldn't say hair category 3 has more than hair category 1, okay? All right, so they're not numeric. 3 versus 1, it doesn't make sense to have some kind of comparison and say 3 is more than 1 in that case, okay? Whereas, if you did something like how many siblings do you have, you can say the person with 3 siblings has more siblings than the person with 1 sibling. That's numeric. That makes sense. Okay. On the flip side, you can also take a numeric variable and make it categorical. So for example, you can take ages and you can turn it into categories. Minor, somebody whose age is between 0 and 17, and adult, somebody whose age is 18 or higher, or something like that, right? Or you have different kind of age demographics. So if you are an advertising or marketing company, you'd say, okay, we're going to design an app that's targeting people in the 18 to 24 category, or we're going to create an app that's designed for 55 to and older, or something like that. Okay, so different. You can take numeric variables and make them categorical as well. Let's talk about gathering data. Okay, when we gather data, there's a few different places where we can gather our data from, and just broadly speaking, we have anecdotes, observational studies, and controlled experiments. Anecdotes are stories about your experience. Okay, so your life story, what you tell people when somebody says, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself, which is, the dreaded interview question or whatever. That's your anecdote, all right? These also include customer reviews and testimonials and things like that. That's anecdotal evidence. Anecdotes can be useful, and, on Amazon, I go on Amazon to read customer reviews for a different product that I'm researching, right? And these are often, stories of like what happened, right? Oh, it was a great product, it worked well, or, it broke, 2 months after I bought it. Okay? Yelp, I don't know who uses Yelp, but, or, you go on Instagram or something and somebody recommends a restaurant or something and you go, oh, I should check this out. Those are anecdotes, okay? And it's helpful. And you say, oh, you know what? I heard about this place from someone's, feed or something, and I checked it out and I loved the place too, okay? Or, in other times you're like, no, it sucks. Eyewitness testimony. They're useful, but from a statistical standpoint, we don't have ways to kind of deal with it, okay? We don't have ways to deal with anecdotal evidence, and we don't have a way to kind of organize it or even check to see if it's remotely representative of the population. And now all of these kind of online places where people write reviews, they're suffering from a whole bunch of like fake reviews as well. And I think we've probably had the experience of shopping for some product from some company that we've never heard of, and we say, well, okay, this product has 4.9 stars, but only 12 people have reviewed it. This one has 4.6 stars, and 3,000 people have reviewed it. What's the product you're gonna buy? But it's also like, okay, those 3,000 people who reviewed it, are a lot of them fake? Were they paid for? Sometimes you buy a product and you get a little card that says like, oh, we'll give you a bonus if you leave us a 5-star review, and you go, this seems a little questionable, unethical, right? So I don't know, right? And the other thing is, just individual experiences just vary greatly, so much, okay? And we can't use that to make conclusions about the general population. So someone says, I used to have chronic back pain, and then I started using these essential oils, and I feel a lot better now. And we go, I'm so glad. I'm glad to hear that. At the same time, I'm not convinced that this is going to work for every single person out there either, right? So this could be someone's individual experience, and we're not denying that person's story, but also, one thing that could be happening is, it could be the essential oils that they started using. It could be something unrelated that just kind of by coincidence aligned at the same time with, at the same time that they started using the product. There could be something entirely else, placebo effect. There's all sorts of things, and it's hard to know, right? From a statistical standpoint, we just don't have a way to deal with that and investigate. So we'll turn to observational studies and controlled experiments as our sources for dealing with, for gathering data that we can then use. So in an observational study, what we do is we observe our subjects, hence observational. And ideally, the sample that we're going to study or observe is going to be representative of the population. If possible, we use random sampling, okay? And so this would be something like you get a telephone survey, I don't know. And, I'm always questionable. I always kind of wonder about surveys that are done on the phone, because sometimes, I don't know if you ever get phone calls, other than like your car extended warranty, if you get a phone call where they say, hey, do you have a few minutes and are you willing to answer a few questions? And I almost always say no, I don't want to give you a few minutes of my time. But maybe I should answer, because maybe they'll start doing things that maybe my opinion will be heard, but I don't know, okay? But ideally, your sample is going to be representative of the population. Again, very difficult to pull that off. We try not to interfere with the subjects other than taking measurements. But taking measurements in of itself a lot of times is a form of interference. There's a side story I have to tell you about. Okay, and the subject's own actions will determine whether they are in the treatment group or the control group. So we don't tell people, you have to do this or you have to do that. People will just kind of, they do their own thing, and we say, okay, these people happen to be people who exercise daily, okay? And these people are people who don't. These people are people who watch over, 2 hours of TV every day or something like that. And these people are doing, do something else, okay? And at the end of the observational study, maybe we find a relationship, and we can say there's an association between these two variables. The people who exercise daily also report having lower blood pressure numbers than the people who did not, or something like that. Okay, and so, but all we can do is we can just conclude there's an association with exercise and lower blood pressure, but we cannot come to the conclusion that exercise causes lower blood pressure, or in the reverse, we cannot say lower blood pressure causes exercise. Okay. All we can say is there's some kind of association. There's some kind of association between these two variables. But we can't draw the conclusion that one is causing the other. It could be that people who exercise daily also tend to have diets that are high in some nutrition or low in some other kind of thing. And maybe that's the thing that's responsible for the lower blood pressure. Okay, we don't quite know, right? A silly example, and this is based on a true data set. There's a data set where researchers they surveyed a whole bunch of families, and they asked a whole bunch of questions of all of these different families and households. Questions like I guess typical questions like what's your annual income and how many members in your household, but other questions like how many pounds of vegetables did you eat this past week, and how much of this kind of meat, and how much of this and that, and questions like how many electronic devices do you have in the house, and what is your the academic performance of your children at school, and things like that, and they just collected all of these different variables across all of these different families. And if you just looked at a whole bunch of these variables and asked, is there some kind of association or relationship, a real relationship and a real phenomenon that popped up was reading performance at school was associated with the number of electronic devices at home. It wasn't a very strong association, but it also wasn't something that we could just chalk up to random chance. And it turned out that families that had more electronic devices, so this would be things like the number of TVs and iPhones and Nintendo and video game consoles and whatever you have, families that tended to have more of these things tended to have students that were reading at above grade at or above grade level than families with fewer of these things. Okay, so does that mean electronic devices is responsible or is causing students to have higher reading performance at the school? And we would say no, that's not what's going on. And what do you guys think could be an explanation for this potential relationship that we're seeing? Yeah. Income. Okay. So I would agree the income is probably related somewhere in there, and income could be families with higher income might have more electronic devices than families with lower income. Why would families with higher income have higher reading performance than families with lower income, right? So, because that in of itself, we kind of have said, oh, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. But then also at the same time, it's like, well, why do we accept that as like, yeah.
Well, I work as a tutor.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So families with higher income have perhaps access to greater educational resources and things like that, right? Like private tutoring is an expense that families with lower income just that might not be an option for them. But yeah, there's a bunch of things. Unfortunately, a lot of local schools are funded by kind of local taxes and things of that nature. Schools in might in lower income neighborhoods might have a harder time attracting high quality educators and things like that. There's a whole bunch of different factors at play, and it's difficult. The answer is there's a lot of kind of complicated things kind of relating these variables together. And so when you have an observational study, just because you see a relationship between variables doesn't mean that an actual relationship exists. Okay. A confounding variable is a variable that that can be used to kind of explain the association. So we might say income is a confounding variable, although income in and of itself doesn't fully explain everything, all of the different dynamics and pressures there. Okay. So that's the observational study. We also have the controlled experiment. The controlled experiment, in the controlled experiment, the subjects are assigned by the researcher to be in the treatment group or the control group. So people who volunteer to be part of the experiment usually sign some waivers, and they agree to allow the researcher to say, you're going to be in this group or you're going to be in this group. Okay? Now, ideally, we have enough people to observe a range of outcomes. Okay? The sample size is large enough for us to observe a range of outcomes. And when we assign, as the researchers assign people into the different groups, they use random assignment. They randomly assign who's going to be in the treatment group and who's going to be in the control group. It's important that, or a lot of times, it's important that the participants don't know if they're in the treatment group or the control group. We don't want them to know, am I getting the actual medication or am I getting the fake drug or the placebo, okay? And so a lot of times we use placebos, okay, as a way to kind of keep somebody from knowing whether they're receiving medication or not, right? So they get they also get a set of pills that chemically don't have anything, no active ingredient that's going to medically affect their body, but the patient doesn't know this, or the participant doesn't know this, and so they're also taking pills not knowing if it's actually going to have an effect or not, okay? So the participants shouldn't know if they're in the treatment or control group. Also, if somebody's going to be making an evaluation, that person also needs to be blind, or they should not know if the patient or participant is in the treatment or control group. So for example, certain variables are easy to measure, right? Someone's weight, it's easy. You just have them stand on a scale. The scale spits out a number, right there. So that's not something difficult to measure. But on other things, like, is this medication effective at treating depression and anxiety? Okay, there's no machine where you just stick your head in there and it says, oh, your depression score is 17. You sit with a professional. The professional, your therapist or your psychologist will often interview you, ask you questions like, in the past week, how many out of 7 days, how many days did you find it difficult to get out of bed? And I don't know, questions like that. And based on how you respond to these questions, the person will make an evaluation and say, your symptoms of depression are improving, or they're not improving, or they're getting worse, or something like that. Okay. And so if there's somebody making an evaluation, that person shouldn't know, oh, this person is getting actual medication or this person's getting placebo, okay? And so in that case, if both the participant and the person making evaluations don't know whether they're in the treatment or control group, we call that a double-blind study. Both participant and evaluator don't know. That's a double-blind experiment, and only the person running the experiment would know who's getting what, okay? Now, if we use random assignment and we said, okay, here are all of our participants, they all kind of qualified to be part of our study because we're studying this medication as a possible treatment for depression, and everybody kind of had these were evaluated to be moderate to severely depressed or something like that, and in the beginning, we had all of these patients, and we randomly assigned some to be in the placebo group, randomly assigned some to be in the treatment group. And at the end of the study, we found those who got the medication had improved this much versus those who received placebo only improved this much. And we'll say, at the start of the study, there was no rhyme or reason why one group would have better improvement numbers than the other group, because we randomly assigned people to each of these groups. The only real appreciable difference between these two groups was this one got the medication and this one got the placebo. And therefore, at the end of the study, if we observe a difference between the two groups, we can attribute that difference to the difference in medication, or a difference between treatment and control. And so we can say we can make a cause and effect conclusion when we do a controlled experiment or a random experiment. Okay? Does that kind of make sense as far as what's happening in there? Now, it is important that we use random assignment, and we don't leave it up to someone else's decision to say, oh, we should give this person the medication and this person should get the placebo or something. Okay? So an example is, if you look at possible treatments for cancer, one thing that you will find is surgery often has the highest success rate versus other treatments, okay? And part of the reason for that, so surgery is often an effective method, but surgery also has the highest success rate, partially because the assignment of who gets recommended for surgery is not a random decision. Okay, so surgery, by definition, is a highly invasive procedure with a long recovery time. And so if there is an elderly patient, say somebody who's 75 years old or something with cancer, the doctor is not going to recommend surgery for this patient, because there's a risk that the surgery itself could end up kind of killing the patient, or making it very difficult for this person to recover. And so the doctors don't randomly assign who gets surgery and who doesn't. Okay, so generally a doctor will only recommend surgery for somebody who is already in kind of good health and believes has a high chance of success or of recovery. And so just kind of by nature, that only healthier patients are recommended for surgery in the first place plays a role into kind of the high success rate of surgery, as a possible treatment, right? So even just because random assignment isn't there, it's hard to kind of separate the effect of overall starting health and the treatment itself, right? Versus what is responsible, the surgery or the starting health, or is it both that kind of play into the high success rate that we see? All right. Any questions here regarding the differences between observational studies or controlled experiments or things like that? Okay, let me go ahead and give you your final view quiz question. The view quiz question, the final answer is the letter E. E as in elephant. E as in elephant, okay? So please make sure you answer your view quiz, week 1, Monday lecture view quiz with your 3 answers, and get your credit for that. We'll end a few minutes early today, and we'll wrap up here. Also, I'll stick around a little bit after class if you have any questions or issues. And normally I will have office hours on Mondays, but I'm not going to have office hours today. Okay, it's the very start of the class. I don't think you have any kind of questions about your homework. And again, my recommendation is get started on just the Chapter 1 homework, and you will attend section and lab today. And there's going to be a lot coming at you. But do your best. I'm looking forward to a great quarter, or a great session, I guess, 6 weeks with you guys, and we will see you on Wednesday. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you later.